Hello to everyone, this is Vishal, and again we are in the session of the day, that is the second part of the clean architecture. And first, I'm giving thanks that for you appreciate my videos and the sessions. Uh, so let us start the second session of the clean architecture as where we left it, that means on the domain layer. So as we discussed on the first time on my previous video, that what is the clean architectures and how we can represent it and what's the dependency rule or how much we satisfy it with our MVVM approaches, and we have some solid rules, and in the solid rules that means we use the single responsibility principle. So a lot of things we discussed, and also we give the three layers, and we discuss the presentations and the data layers and how we can divide our MVVM into different layers. So it's just for that idea is just to be discriminate the layers in which we have to do the business logics and view logics. So but here the most interesting part we that is the domain layer, and also we discussed after that the device layer, but that's not with the under the Bob's architecture. That is the separate one because of just we need a connectivity managers or likewise that, so we put it. But today we have to learn domain with a small example. So if you see that this diagram, we discussed that we have make a two layers. This is the after the repository that we have complete business logic, and before repositories we have complete view approaches. So if we discuss the domain layer, so we need to check it first what exactly it is, and why we need it, and where we need this domain layer. So there is no best solutions. I have seen, I've read many tutorials for that, but everyone has its own view, and by the Bob's architectures that also be the views be related to um, what he exactly say, but how much it be satisfied with our MVVM, that's the thing we have to learn. So what's the Bob's point we discussed first? So the software is in this layer contains application specific business rules. It encapsulates and implements all of the use case of the system. And these use cases orchestrate means plan, or orchestrate that means we have to plan for the flow of data. So that means this use case orchestrates the data or to the from the entities and direct those entities to use their enterprise-wide business rules to achieve the goals. So if we learn it in a simple language, so we can say that we have one more layer in between the data and your presentation, in which we can make all the use cases, or you can define all the interfaces or callbacks with that, so by which we can call any repository. So if you have a multiple use cases, we don't know the use cases, never we know who will call to me, and we just know the bottom layer that we have to call something, some repository. Sorry. So that's the things. That means if we have a complex architecture on that, but generally need to avoid that callbacks because of that the cause of the memory leaks. So we have to use these use cases belike. So we do not expect changes in this layer to affect the entities. We also do not expect this layer to affect by changes to externalities such as the database, the UI, any common frameworks. If you do any changes in these layers, so it never affect on your bottom layer or your presentation layer. We just call back the things, and if you want to call that such a layer, you can call it by your presenter from the view, and you can take it on the view model. So what we did exactly, we can just call the things view model to presenter. By presenter, to repository. But here we have the middle layer, so we can first call that use cases and get back data on that. So that's be the layer where you need it. So the domain layer, what be the domain layer is responsible for specifying the repository, abstraction, interfaces to be used by data layer. So that means you have to put all your um, we can say abstractions, interfaces, callbacks, use case be there. So domain layer shouldn't include presentation or data layers. And domain layer is responsible for specifying the repository, abstraction, interface to be used by data layer. That means you have to call that particular repository. So we need to understand callbacks and use case first. So then we go for this layer. So I'm just showing to you this, that this is your presentation in which we have learned the view model, presenter, and interfaces for the presenters, and presenter implementations, adapters. So these things be in the presentation layer. And in data layer we have entity, repository, room, retrofit, other business logics. But I have seen some people doing be that entities be under the domain layer and that make it. But do not go with that, because of our MVVM say that this be the separate after the your repository. So whenever you work with your repository implementations or anything, you just make it separate, because of if we say someone that you have to complete the business logic, so he started with the repository and work on that and take the things and just separate that layer. So it depends on you whether you call that repository by the view model directly or via your domain layer. It depends. So the domain layer be the use case, callbacks, and interface of the repository, so we can call that particular repository. That's the thing. So here, if we say that, yeah, if you call the RX Java, I will make one more videos in which I will describe you one or two videos. I will make the RX Java with your clean architecture also. But today, just we have to learn the domain layer. Uh, So here you can see that we have a presentation, we have a view model, presenter, and that's with the observer. That observer will be via your live data or via your RX Java. It depends which kind of call you want. These be the multiple use cases you have to work, and that multiple use cases can call your repository 1, repository 2, depends, and that your repository be works or RX Java be works with the retrofit or room. That's be your data layer. So that is a very simple and bottom layer, so you never get access be I mean not make it a complex. It just work with the repository always. Okay, a repository implementation. So if you say that our flow of data was that be view model, and that view model approaches your data repository as we did it, because of we used the two layers on that case, presentation and the data. Now if we have some callbacks or domains and some complex architecture, then you put this domain layer. So it is depends on your complexity of work. So if you say that you have a complex works and there be lot of use cases you have to want, sometimes we need callbacks on our work. So then you put that domain layer, and that domain layer interact with this view model, and that means always be you have to update your view model. That's the important part. And that domain layer be that use particular use case be get access with that particular repository. So that's the way we have to work, and I will show you example, small example on that. So if you go with that use case or callbacks, so first we need to discuss a simple interface in which we can put something and then we can implement it. So it depends, that's be your simple interface be there in your use case. Generally use case be your callbacks means you want something, as I describe on my first tutorial of the volley, in which I make a data manager class and we get data access, data success, or failure. So I make there two callbacks. So that means callbacks means I never call you, I will call you back. That means the purpose of the use case is to request data to repository and turn into something usable for the view. That is the most important line. That is the purpose of the use cases is to request data to repository and turn into something usable for the view. So the callbacks or use cases simply means don't call us, we call you. So that is the difference between the normal interface and the callbacks or the use cases. So generally we can call this use cases because of we update something from, and we call something repository and then update that repository to our callbacks. So many cases these callbacks are cause of memory leaks. So you have to, whenever you work with the callbacks, you just handle it with care. So if you go with the definition, it is in computer programming, a callback is a piece of executable code that is the passed as an argument of to the other. So which is the expected to callbacks the argument at some convenient time. So the invocations may be immediate as a synchronous callback, or it might happen at the later time. And as in asynchronous callback as in RxJava tutorials as we discuss nowadays on our RxJava. So that means callback is a piece of executable code. So that means that coding in which we have to work, that is passed as an argument to the code. That means we just pass the success values or a failure values by the repository, or we pass something on our result. That means JSON result and complete observable emit data. So that means we have to put some single and observable flowable. So that's complete result we have to push on that. So that's the thing. Or we can say some more definition that a use case can fetch data from repository and convert them in specific format, taking only for information needed. So that's very simple language. And represent your business actions. It's what you can do with the application. Expect one use case for each business actions. So pure business logic, plain code, that's it. The use case doesn't know who triggered it, okay, and how the results are going to be represented. It just be a separate layer in which we have to work, and the presenter be called that particular use case. So use case be just a simple calling interface where you have to show something and then call back and call the on your view model. So that's the thing. So sometimes we need a complex architecture, so we use these kind of use cases. Otherwise, our enough work is that we have to call with the view model to our presenters directly if we have a very small architecture or small work with the apps. So, and through business expectations, with the purpose of the use case is to request data to repository and turn something usable for the view. I told you. So that's be the most important line again I'm saying, and that's very easy. So I will show you by the practically two small things with that domain layer how we can make these callbacks and work with this, and how we can call the repository by the domain layer, and how we can update our view model. So once these things be clear, then we go for the one more layer, that is the domain layer. That is a separate because of that's not with the Bob's architecture or the other, because of some users want that where we put that kind of things, connections manager, shared interfaces values be there, share preferences be there. So we just make a separate classes on that layer. Because of this kind of work, if you put on the separate, otherwise you can put it on the presentation, but that's not good. So that's we'll discuss on the device layer. So first we have to go for the domain layer and see the practical with that. Okay, so let's discuss it in Android Studio. We do some small practical on that, and I'm using two kind of things, two kind of approaches here. So you learn that how we can create a use cases or a callbacks be here, and or a simple interface be here, so we can implement the same things for our repositories. So here the domain layers in some cases, where we have a very pure architecture, just we can say the clean architecture, we just make the things by the view model and then just call it directly to the repository. But in some cases we need to get back data from repository, so we do not want be direct interaction with that view model. So on that cases we just go for that the middle layer, that's we call your domain layer. So on domain layer we have to do this approach that I am making a small interfaces, just my one team be working on the data and the other team be working on the views, that's we call presentation. So third is which kind of things we have to implement and related to the business logic. So that's with the communication between your presentation and the data. So first I'm giving a very small example to you. See here. So just we have a domain, and in this domain if I'm making a this callback, so I am making a callback 1. If you watched my previous tutorials of MVVM in which I use the volley, on that case I made a class that's for data manager and that is for the use cases, that's kind of callbacks the things. So the same thing, but here we working with the layers. So what to do, we just go for this as in a void success, and in this success I want be a data just like my mutable live data, and that mutable live data be the kind of a string and that string be your data. Very simple. And here I'm making a void that is your the failure, and that failure be the same thing for the mutable live data as in a string, and I'm making the error. Okay, so let's be this simple callbacks 1, and now I'm making the repository related to that. So on the repository folder I'm making a Java class and give the name to this callback 1 repository. So just know that this kind of repository I have, and my team will work on that. So here, but I'm just giving first kind of complex things, then make it more clear. So just this callback repository be as in the private mutable live data, and that mutable live data be your string, and that's your data. String mutable, that's your new mutable live data. Okay, so that's be your callback 1 repository, and here I'm making the constructor for this, and this constructor be your callback repository, and we have to call these things. Now the approach is I want to get access the things. So we have two ways to work with that. First I'm showing the old way, that is complex, but then we make it more clear according to as we want to be a clean architecture, so we have to clean this code more. So here what to do, you just make a public, how the callback works. The public void get data, and here we can say that this is your final. I'm giving the string name, maybe some string be source of that it comes to you, and this is your final, and in this final this is your callback 1, and here the callback 1. So there we can get access the things. And if I say that if that's my method, you can do these methods or logic B from your repository. So I'm just saying that it is if it is a call. So what to do if it is a call, then that is your data, sorry, callback 1. No, because of you have to set the data. So what to do, string mutables data dot set data, set values. Okay, and this is the callback. And here I'm using that callback 1 dot success. So you can see that whenever we get the success is it calls to the method back. So this is your callback. So that means if it is a success, so I'm saying that this is a string mutable live data. We worked here. Else, it means if it is not a call, so that means we have to make it as a string mutable live data. So that's your set values, and you can say that this is a big error or a error. And callback one dot failure, and that failure viewer string, again mutable live data. So we can either get success or, but that's the approach. But here, what be the result if you see that this callback repository, if I call with the view model, because of repository, as we discussed on the last time, we call that repository by the view model. So what to do for that here, we have a view model, and that view model I'm making be as a callback one view model. That's easy, and here we extend that view model. So that means two things be happen. Number one is first we have to we create interface. On the second time we have to create that kind of repository related to particular uh, callbacks. On that we have a number of callbacks, so we make a number of repositories be there. But how we can distinguish, let's discuss. So first we have a create view model, and here I'm making that a callback repository. That means callback repository be here. If we call that, and this is the callback repository, and here I'm making that public mutable live data, and that mutable live data be a string kind of a string mutable live data, and we can say that this is a public and callback view model constructor. That's done. And in this constructor I'm just calling this is your callback repository, and this is your new callback repository, and callback repository dot get data, and I'm just making the name call be here, and comma, and at this time that's me making a new callback one. So that means whenever we get success or a failure, we just call this callback one. So here we are doing the approach, that means your view model get access both the layers. Number one, the domain layer as well as your data layer. So that's some kind of drawbacks, but let's discuss, we make it more clean. So first we have to check that this success be here. On this success, what to do, you just see that this is your string mutable live data be your data. You have to pass the things be here, which kind of data be here, and if this is the failures, and this is your error be here. Okay, so these two things be happen on your back callback one view model. Okay, now we have to call these things in your presenter, that means your view your main activity, and here what to do, I'm just making a private callback one view model, callback one view model, and that callback one view model be your new callback one view model. That's it. And callback one view model dot string live data be your observe. So you can see that we have a two kind of observer. When we work with the mutable live data, that's also be observer, and whenever with the RxJava, that's also be observer. So we'll discuss about the differences between these kind of observers. The same approach we can do with the RxJava also. I will make more video in which I will show to you how it all together works. Okay, so here this is your new observer. So in this you can see that what's be the value. So I'm just making the log.d, and in this log.d value is plus s. So Okay, this is on the create method, but I want these things on click. Okay, so here you can make it as in the main activity dot this. Okay, so let's run it and see how it do this. So that is the thing where you can get access both the layers, but I will show you that how we can make more separations if we using this. That means we have to make a separate use case, and that use case we call your particular repository, and there is no interaction between the view model to your repository. So that means the middle layer works on that cases, but these kind of callbacks you have to work very rare because of where you need that. So this is, you can see that the first tracing is call me, and that is the error. Okay, and I make it as in the repository callback view model, and let me check the callback. Okay, it is a cap C. So if I call it by the cap C, what happened? Because of it is on the else condition, because of value is not be matched, and if it is in call that is on the match value, then it comes to you as an on the if case. So this one is the callback. Okay, so this is the first approach you can do with that, and now I'm making or giving the second approach how it works. So let's see on the second approach. Okay, so I'm showing you one more approach here, that how we can make it more clean. So here if you have a domain, and in this domain layer, as I discussed, that I'm making a one more interface, and that the name of this is callback to, and in this callback to I'm just making a mutable live data, and that's be your string, and that string be your get data maybe. And if you want to some return values, you can just or pass the things values, you can just pass it. But I'm showing you all kind of things, all kind of interfaces you have worked with that, as we did the success failure, as we did the mutable if you want to something. So if this is the way, and as I discussed that if we implement that on the same layer, so what happened? Because of we have to satisfy that what exactly the domain layer be work. So if I'm making a callback to implementation class, and here we can implement that, and that implementation for the callback to. So that means we have to go for the implement methods, and that the we just make a skeleton of these things be that. So we have to call back some things which is the get data, because of we need some user values, some kind of data, some kind of list in a form of immutable. So that's be the scenario. And I discuss with the data team that you have to work with that kind of repository in which you make a separate concern on that. You can just get the things, and I call your repository and get back the things to me. Very easy. So what the data layer we work here? Data layer we work as usual as it doing. Just the data layers just for making a repository. So that means it making a repository, that's your callback to repository, and that's callback repository be work be like that is a separate layer. So that means the team we work on it like this, and say that we have a private mutable live data
or RX Java, whatever view. At this time I'm just showing to you a simple approaches of mutable live data, but on my coming tutorials I will describe you how it works with the RX Java retrofit and all together, and we make it a complete small project. I will make it in coming tutorials. You just learn what this domain layer be working and how it can do that and how it can achieve these things. Okay, new mutable live data, and here if I'm making a in a repository, I am just generating a constructor, and that be a simple constructor. And on the second approach, that is be a generate a getter be like this, and we have just simply returned the value, and that means we can get access be here by the retrofit or whatever. We if we want the list, you can just use this list, and that list become on your domain forms. Okay, so here you can say that this is your data dot set value, and this is second approach. Very easy. So this is your second approach, and we have to work like this. So this is our repository that is created by our team, that we discussed that you have create your all kind of repository separate concern, and I will get called by my domains. So that's a discussion during the analysis. Now we have to come in your implementation and see that yeah, our repository be ready. So what to do, we have to call that repository be your call uh, back to repository, and that callback to repository be here. And what to do, we just make a constructor, and that constructor be here generate a constructor that is simple. Okay, and that constructor we have to call that particular repository in it. Mm. So and also we want that callback values of data. So I'm just making a mutable live data, and that's be a string. We in a future I will make more short form of this, but I am explaining each and every layer, so I'm just discussing about that how it works with this. Okay, and if you go with this, you just call the repository as the new callback repository to repository, and that callback to repository dot get data, and you know that get data be in a form of mutable live data, so we can store this value and return this value. So that means that data comes in our domain layer. So that means the approach be like that. We have a user repository that is created by the other team or whatever be by you, it depends. Means that means I'm better whenever talking about the other team, that means that is a separate layer which we work by the some other person, or you can do that. You just business logics be created here, and which kind of repository you want, you just make it. And here you can say that is the domain where you need the callbacks. At this time I'm not calling with the view model, I am calling with the domain, because of we make it more clean as the Bob says. So here you domain can get access that repository, that data repository. So what to do, that's the things big here. And now as it is implemented, so we have to go for our view model. And here you view model, what saying that I'm just accessing the domain layer. So that's be my callback to view model, and that's be extend by view model. Those who don't know about the view model, just go for the MVVM approaches first, then come in on the clean these tutorials. Okay, so first you have to learn on my basic tutorials of MVVM. So this is the public and callback to view model, and here my data be like a public, because of on each and every layer I'm just describe you how it comes to you as in from the bottom to middle, middle to upper. So that's your again data. Because of data we can get access, and here I'm making a private call for my implementation, because of here I'm approach to on layer domain layer. Okay, and this callback to dot get data be here, and that get data be here as in the data. Very easy. So that means these two things be because of at as we observed like this, so we can get the things be here. Or if you want to make a method and get call be your observe, if you want to observe the method be here, so you can create your observer also for this data value. Okay, and here you can that's the same, do the same thing and observe the things be here on your main activity. So what the main activity say that here if we have a private callback to view model, callback to view model, so that means here do not use this. Callback to view model is equals to new callback to view model, and here callback to view model dot data, or you can say the get data, observe this main activity dot this comma new observer. Okay, and here you just copy it whatever be the value, so that means log dot and in this you just say that value is the same URS. Okay, so let's see that how these three layers be approaches to you. But there is lot of methods we can solve it very easily, like the dagger, so make it more clean. So we'll discuss it on my coming tutorials, how we make it and how we satisfy it and how we make it more clean and clean in your layers in the form of layers. So today is the discussion of the domain, and we'll see the code. Let's see what happened. Okay, so this is the second approach. So you can see that here the layer B, this is main activity, and here we call the call. That means that is very simple, because of here we have a presenter always works in your presentation layer. Okay, and this is the callback model. That means you can approach the our view model, that means view and view model on the same layer. So if any changes be on your model, it reflect to your view, but any changes in your other things on your repository or the things, but it never comes till we can get access the things. Okay, now what happened with this view model, that means here this view model be work with separately to your implementation, and that implementation we work on the domain layer, and that domain layer be works with that particular repository. So that means that repositories that's already made, and we discuss we need this kind of repository. Maybe in a future I want the same data or that kind of a data, we just using that the business logic in my project, and get access with the domain layer whatever be the requirement, and that domain layer be work with your view model. So that's the strategy. But I think we have a lot of options to work with the mold clean. But what happened that in other videos we discuss that in sometimes we need a connectivity manager, sometimes we need a share preferences. So I don't want to see that this kind of work we put it on the presentation, either you presentation, but that's not good. If you work with a device layer you can make it. So that is not as a clean architecture, but that is a separate, you can do it separately with that. So that means if you're working with the layer, so you make it more clear, more clean, sorry. So we'll discuss the next tutorial how if we have uh, your domain, presentation and data all together be works, and we give a simple practical example also, and we discuss all those device layers. So you will continue this tour with me, that means on my coming tutorials of the clean architecture. And thanks for your appreciations for my video. So all the best, thank you so much.